Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning to you. I feel like Mr. Rogers does. How Mr. Rogers would come in and put on his shoes and put on his sweater as he was singing, "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" Yeah, that's how I feel right now. Bear with me, people. Bear with me. All right. Good morning to everyone. Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning to you. We have got a lot to cover. So if you know me like you know me, thank you, Prophet. You already know, don't you? Oh my goodness. Oh Lord. Help us, Jesus. Help us. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Daring Dialogues. I am your host, Shantae Charles. I want to say good morning and thank you for joining me. Thank you for those who got the clarion call to be on today. If you are with us for the first time, Daring Dialogues is a talk that I give every day, Monday through Friday. And every single day we cover a different subject. Mondays is motivation. Tuesdays is history. Wednesdays is relationships. Thursday is theology and philosophy. And Friday is health and wealth. So today is Tuesday, and we're getting ready to go in on some history, American history, Black history. We're going to deal with this Roseanne debacle, because really it's not just a Roseanne issue, it's an American issue. So that's one of the things that we're going to cover and talk about today. And as I was thinking on it, because I really don't think people understand a couple of things. They don't understand what's the problem. They don't understand why it's offensive. And they don't understand how long this offense has been going on in American culture. All right. So what I've tried to do today is I've gathered some images and I have some articles that really kind of help me to sum up what I was going to say anyway. So what I've done is I pulled two articles, and you can look these up. I'll give you the type of article I pull them from, so that if you want to, you can look them up and share them on your page. And then, of course, as you all know, I'm going to add my own seasoned salt to what I'm sharing today. All right. But in case you've been on Mars and you don't know what the issue is with Roseanne took it upon herself, and she was online and she was responding to someone else online. And she made a comment about one of our former government officials, Valerie Jarrett. Okay. And she said that Valerie Jarrett was equivalent to someone getting together with, I think she said, the phrase escaped my mind, but she added when someone comes together plus the Planet of the Apes. Somebody will refresh my memory of the first part of what she said. Good morning. When someone plus the Planet of the Apes comes together and has a baby, it equals Valerie Jarrett. Well, people were outraged by this statement. Some people came to her defense, saying that, thank you. That's what it was. When Muslim Brotherhood plus Planet of the Apes has a baby, it will turn out Valerie Jarrett. And so people started, of course, were upset because of the Islamic reference to the Muslim Brotherhood plus the Planet of the Apes. And so today, as I was thinking about how do I talk about this, because I don't really think people understand the basis for those kinds of comments and why they keep happening over and over and over again after we say This is not appropriate. This kind of commentary is not appropriate, yet people keep doing it, right? So as I was thinking on that, the Lord gave me the phrase ape theology. All right. And I do have my board today because we might have a couple words I need to write down for you all, just so you can add it to your vocabulary. All right. So this is what we're talking about today. Okay. And I know you're like, theology, what does this have to do with Black history? A lot. So if you're taking notes, this is what we're going to be talking about today. Ape theology. Okay? Ape theology. And so we want to look at where this idea stems from, where Black people are constantly and consistently associated with apes, monkeys, etc. All right. I have here a couple of articles, and then I'm going to talk about the doctrine. So I may go over my hour. So those of you who need to step out after an hour, I understand. You could just come back and watch the replay. But I want to make sure that I get through everything so that we have a record of it. And if you want to go back and catch the extended part, if there is an extended part, you can do that. Okay. All right. Make sure I have an eraser here. Let's roll. The first thing we're going to talk about is this word simian or Simeonism. Simianian. Okay. Simean. Simeon. Y'all can't see that, can you? Let me stick with black. Simean. Simeon. Or you might see the term Simeonism. All right. And this is referring to the comparison of Black people to monkeys or apes. And it has a long, dark history. The article says comparing Black people to monkeys has a long, dark simian history. All right. And the article is by The Conversation Africa. In the history of European cultures, the comparison of humans to apes and monkeys was disparaging from its very beginning. When Plato, quoting Heraclitus, declared apes ugly in relation to humans and men apish in relation to gods, it was a cold comfort for the apes. It was transcendentally disconnected from their human co-primates. The fathers of the church, listen, the fathers of the church took it one step further. Let me give you some names. All right. A man by the name of Saint Gregory of Let me make sure I'm spelling this right. Saint Gregory of Nazianzus. All right. And Saint Isidore of Seville. These two compared pagans to monkeys. All right. Now, remember, we talked the other day about the papal bull or the order or declaration or decree that went out that anybody who was a Saracen or an Arab and anybody who was a pagan, okay, were allowed to be enslaved into perpetuity according to the Catholic Church. So when they went out conquering, all right, that was the edict that if they were found to be pagan, all right, they could be enslaved. So now you have two of the saints from the Catholic Church that actually compared pagans or those who did not know their God to monkeys. In the Middle Ages, Christian discourse recognized simians as devilish figures and representatives of lustful and sinful behavior. As women were subject to an analogous defamation, things proceeded as one would expect. In the 11th century, Cardinal Peter Damian gave an account. In his book, he wrote a story. This was a cardinal. He wrote a story of a monkey that was the lover of a countess or a woman of nobility from Liguria. The jealous simian or monkey killed her husband and fathered her child. So this use of the monkey as something wild, something lustful, something sinful, something devilish, all right, has been going on for centuries. Hotbed of monsters. Several centuries later, in 1633, John Donne, in his Metempsychosis, even let one of Adam's daughters be seduced by an ape in a sexual affair. So this is another person who tells this tale, all right? From then on, this manifestation of simianization, that is the caricature of the ape with the woman or the ape taking over the woman, was intimately intertwined with this racist dimension, all right? Already Jean Boydin, doyen of the theory of sovereignty, had ascribed the sexual intercourse of animals and humans to Africa south of the Sahara. So then it became something that was described and something that was ascribed to a particular group of people. All right. So if you follow me, you have the issue of ape-like or monkey-like behavior. People wrote about this behavior. They began to attach this behavior to the pagans, who they considered pagan. And then they began to characterize a whole group of people in Africa south of the Sahara as having this kind of behavior. All right. He characterized the region of Africa south of the Sahara. All right. That means sub-Saharan Africa. He characterized the region as a hotbed of monsters arising from the sexual union of humans and animals. So early on, all right, there was this picture that African people were from the sexual union of humans and animals. All right. So this is not just a caricature that people are referring to. This is what some actually believed. Let me keep moving. This particular idea and thought continued a good century onwards, and the story began to enter the realm of Europe's great philosophical thought when John Locke, in his 1689 essay entitled Concerning Human Understanding, declared that women have conceived by drills, and these drills were a particular kind of people in Africa. His intellectual contemporaries knew well that the stage for this transgressing love story and savagery story was Africa because, according to the wisdom of the time, drills lived in Guinea. So he was referring to, again, a particular group of people, and he was saying that these people were going around, and in his thought, they were attacking these women, all right? In the following centuries, simianization would enter into different sciences and humanities, and we're going to talk about that. Anthropology, archaeology, biology, ethnology, geology, medicine, philosophy, and not least theology were some of the fields that this ape theology, this ape doctrine began to invade. All right. Most of us have either seen the old version or the new version of King Kong. If you have, put some hearts on the screen. All right, hearts on the screen if you have seen King Kong, either the old version or the newer version. Literature, arts, and everyday entertainment began to seize on this issue of the ape and the woman, the uncivilized African and the woman. All right? Okay, good. And I can see comments on both YouTube and Periscope today. Excellent. All right, so many of you have seen this. This particular idea, all right, of this wild beast attacking women began to be popularized in television. And we know that, right? It popularized this repellent combination of very sexist and very racist representations. The climax was hugely successful classic of Hollywood's horror factory, King Kong. Yes. And the cover with LeBron and the lady on the magazine depicted him as King Kong. I don't know why he would have allowed somebody to depict him that way, but they were sending a message, okay? At the time of King Kong's production, the public in the U.S. was riveted by a rape trial. Did you know that? So at the time when King Kong was first produced, there was a rape trial going on in the United States. The Scottsboro Boys, very, very famous rape trial, were 9 black teenagers accused of having raped 2 young white women. All right. And there are a couple of documentaries out. You can actually check them out on YouTube about the Scottsboro Boys and their trial. In 1935, a picture story by the Japanese artist Lin Shi Kan and the lithographer Tony Perez was published. Scottsboro, Alabama, carried a foreword by Michael Gold, editor of the communist journal New Masses. One of the 56 images showed the group of the accused young men beside a newspaper with the headline, "Guilty Rape." The rest of the picture was filled with a monstrous black ape figure baring its teeth and dragging off a helpless white girl. Okay? The artists fully understood the interplay of racist ideology, reactionary reporting, and Southern injustice. They recognized that the white public had been thoroughly conditioned by the dehumanizing violence of animal comparison and simianized representations, as in the real racism of the movie King Kong. Here's another thing that adds to this whole ape-like theory. Animalization and even bacterialization were widespread elements of this racist dehumanization. They are closely related to the labeling of others with the language of contamination and disease. Our president just gave a great example of that when he labeled whole countries as blank whole countries. All right. That is that language of contamination and disease by associating a whole group of people with something horrendous. Images that put men on a level with rats, carrying epidemic plagues, or calling people animals were part of the ideological escort of back then anti-Jewish sentiment and anti-Chinese racism. Africa has been labeled as a contagious continent incubating pestilence of all sorts in hot, muggy jungles spread by reckless and sexually unrestrained people. These are some of the historic things and descriptions that were said about Africa. So you bring that up to present day, and then you have AIDS in particular, which people say had its origin in the careless dealings of Africans with the simians, either through contact or either through ingestion, which they have eaten, or whose blood they use as an aphrodisiac, right? So these were some of the initial thoughts about AIDS. They won't tell you that our government has a patent on it. This is just the latest chapter in a long and ugly line of stereotypes directed against different people like the Irish or the Japanese, and Africans and African Americans in particular. To throw bananas, this actually still happens, to throw bananas in front of black sports people. Often this happens in the soccer arena or the football arena, People throw bananas at the black sports players. This is a common racist provocation even on today. All right. So what explains this association of black people defamed as an ape? A combination of factors could be the cause. In the prevalence of a variety of great apes in Africa closest in size to humans. They're just giving some possible causes as to why people might use this. Above the psychic impact of hundreds of years of racial slavery, which stamped Negroes as permanent sub-persons, natural slaves in global consciousness. We're going to get into that in more detail. Large-scale chattel slavery required, listen, large-scale chattel slavery required reducing people to objects. Precisely because of that, it also required the most thorough and systematic kind of dehumanization in that reality. So if I'm going to dehumanize you, I've got to put some theory and I've got to put some details as to why I am dehumanizing you. And I've got to get other people to go along with my opinion that you're not really human so that they will buy into enslaving you. All right. And that is what happened. The origin of species. Long before post-Darwinian scientific racism begins to develop, one can find black people being depicted as closer to apes on the great chain of being. In mid-19th century America, in circles in which the separate origins for races was taken seriously, because remember, they thought that every race had a separate origin. All right. They did not believe that all races came from the same origin. Leading scientists of the day, such as Josiah C. Nott and George R. Glidden, in 1854 created a Types of Mankind document, and they documented what they saw as objective racial hierarchies with illustrations comparing black people to chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans. So they had an actual theory, all right, that they had drawn up to say, hey, these people look more like animals as opposed to everyone else. So let's just put them over in the animal category. Remember, you have to set a label. You have to declassify someone as human and relabel them so that you can get people to go along with systematic dehumanization. And it makes it easier to convince people that if they're not human, then we can use them for our own purposes to do what we want to do. As Stephen Jay Gould comments, the book was not a fringe document. This was not a fringe document, okay? It was the leading American text on racial differences that was going around. So this was a doctrine that was widespread and people bought into it. Darwin did not discredit scientific racism. He only refined it. And, all right. People think that it was just Darwin. No, it wasn't just Darwin. Darwin's revolutionary work, his 1859 work, which most of us know, is called On the Origin of Species. But the longer term actually talks about the struggle of the races. And he wasn't talking about races like a finish line. He was talking about people. So his work did not discredit scientific racism. All right. It did not discredit it. It just refined it. Then also you had the story. We come along into the 20th century and we have another story that is given life. Most of us have seen either the old one or the new one. And that story is Tarzan. All right. Put some hearts on the screen if you've seen Tarzan. I've seen the old one and the new one. Tarzan equals white skin. Popular culture played a crucial role in disseminating these beliefs. The average American layperson would be unlikely to have been reading a scientific journal, but they were certainly reading H. Rider Haggard and Edgar Rice Burroughs, the creator of Tarzan's work. They were going weekly to the movies, including the genre called jungle movies. They were following daily comic strips like The Phantom, Africa's White Super Cop, The Ghost Who Walks. All right. So they may not have been getting their understanding of dehumanizing Black people from textbooks, but they were still getting it from the entertainment side. Africa and Africans occupied a special place in the white imaginary, marked by the most shameless misrepresentations. Not just in numerous books, but in movies that were made and various cartoon strips and comic spin-offs. The most famous one at the time, Tarzan of the Apes. Tarzan would embed in the Western mind the indelible image of a white man ruling a Black continent. Tarzan would equal white skin in ape. The impressively polyglot Burroughs informs us. This is a world in which Black humans are bestial, ape-like, and while the actual apes are near human. Burroughs' work was unprecedented in the degree of its success, but not at all unusual for the period. Rather, it consolidated the mindset of the colonial Western world in the first half of the 20th century that still lingers today. In this conflict between light and dark, white European persons rule ape-like Black underpersons. All right. Patrice Lumumba. If you don't know who Patrice Lumumba is, he was the first democratically elected prime minister of the Congo. Patrice Lumumba, when he was supposed to give his speech, as he had just gotten put into office democratically, it is said that in his speech, he blasted the oppressive legacy of Belgian colonization to the astonishment and outrage of the Belgian king, who had expected a grateful thanks from the natives. This is after the Belgian king had done some of the most horrific things to the people of the Congo, such as cut off their hands during their enslavement, cut off their hands if they weren't producing enough. All right. So it is said that in Lumumba's address, he insulted the Belgian king. And he said to him, "We are no longer your monkeys." Needless to say, within less than a year, Lumumba would be dead, assassinated with the help of Western powers, and the country turned over to neo-colonial rule. And as we see what's happening in the Congo, they have not let go of that grip yet. The Congo is literally probably one of the wealthiest places in the world, but the people are poor because of what's going on in the country. So, lastly, the use of Simeonization as a racist slur against Black people is not yet over. As shown by the furor in South Africa, this was a couple of years back, a young woman by the name of Penny Sparrow. She was a white woman complaining about Black New Year's revelers. She said, "From now on, I shall address the Blacks of South Africa as monkeys, as I see the cute little wild monkeys do the same, pick and drop litter." America's first couple, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, have been on the receiving end of Simeonization. All you have to do is just type in their names and type in the word ape next to it and hit images in Google, and you will see how many images have been made of them depicting them as apes. All right. So it lets us know that this does not stop at a class boundary. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are. Okay. Racists are racist. They don't care if you have money or not. The internet has overflowed with ape comparisons ever since Barack and Michelle Obama moved into the White House. Even a social liberal newspaper like the Belgian De Morgan deemed it kind of funny to Simeonize the first couple. So that's one article. We're going to come back to maybe later. I want to move on. The next article I have for you is called The Coon Caricature. The Coon Caricature. Blacks as monkeys. And if you know anything about the coon caricature, it's not just monkeys, but this is just one aspect of it. And what I did was I tried to blow up some of the images so that as I talk, you can get a sense of what the article is referring to. They are located in the article. I just didn't pull all of the images. All right. But if you want to check the article out, it's called, you can look it up, The Coon Caricature, Blacks as Monkeys. A hateful association between blacks and monkeys or apes was yet another way that the antebellum South justified slavery. Blacks were considered by some whites to be more ape-like than human and therefore had no self-evident rights. I'm actually going to read you from one of the Klan manuals in detail what they mean by that. All right. So humans have rights. And the ironic thing about this is, let's say they did have the argument that black people, we see you as an animal. Even animals have rights now. All right. Everybody's heard of animal rights. But in our society, animals get more rights than dogs. You shoot a dog, you going to jail. And you're going to do hard time. Am I right? Somebody in my chat box, let me know. If you shoot a dog, you will be doing time. Exactly. Yes, you will. All right? Because they now have animal rights. Michael Vick, asked Michael Vick if he went to jail for what he was doing to dogs. Not human beings, to dogs. Animal rights. Okay? So back then, they tried to justify slavery by saying you had no self-evident rights, including freedom. After the Civil War, the emancipation of slaves, and the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments of the Constitution, when somebody says, where do black people fit into the Constitution? Let me remind you. That's where we fit in. 13th, 14th, and 15th in this country. If you have not read them, please go and read them. Because that's where you fit in. Black people were not a part of the original Constitution. We were not written in as humans in the original Constitution. We were written in as property. That needs to be understood. So white bigots used the association to justify Jim Crow laws and the use of violence, such as the lynching of blacks who challenged the status quo. The general acceptance of the evolutionary theories of Charles Darwin was easily twisted into a means of identifying further evidence for the primitive status of black people. In 1878, a cartoon, for example, had a circus man's monkey attacking a black child. Beneath is the caption, Southern Scenes, an incident in Richmond, Virginia. The Darwinian theory illustrated. Presumably, the monkey felt that his position was challenged by the child and he was defending his territory. Meanwhile, a drastically caricatured black man watches with a smile on his face. The depiction of blacks as apes and monkeys found expression in the mainstream popular culture around the turn of the century, especially in postcards. So what I have here is I printed out 2 of the postcards they have down here. Often it was the Zip, or what they call the urban coon, that was being caricatured for the amusement of white consumers. All right, so here they are. These are 2 early postcards of black people. Can everybody see that? I'm trying to make sure both of you all can see this. And I'll bring it a little closer so you can take a look at it. All right. These are early postcards of black people, caricaturized. Note the simian appearance of the black Americans in each of the postcards and how they have been dandified. These images are intended to be ironic and to cater to the white person's notion that black coons are too stupid to understand that their efforts to assimilate into white culture only emphasizes their inferiority. All right. So these postcards were a mockery of black people, quote unquote, trying to civilize themselves. Throughout much of the 20th century, depictions of blacks as apes and monkeys was only slightly more subtle. The coon caricature in film is discussed at length, but generally blacks were depicted in such a way as to blur the line between audience identification of them as humans. I want to blur the line between identifying you as a human or as a monkey. Direct associations were often made in the overtly racist pop culture, which targeted the niche consumer. For example, in the 1960s, recording artist Johnny Rebel created a song on a Louisiana label that had lyrics like this: America for white, Africa for black, send those apes back to the trees, ship those N-words back. The association between blacks and monkeys was also popular in the various N-word joke books that proliferated throughout the 1900s. Much of the anti-black association was directed toward black celebrities, especially athletes, and it was often done outside of the mainstream pop culture. Jackie Robinson, famous for integrating Major League Baseball, was often the victim of these racial taunts. Also, other evidence of this is shown with Michael Jordan, caricatured as an ape while being interviewed, and also Patrick Ewing being compared to a gorilla. And I will show you these images right now. They're a little bit small, so let me see if I can bring it a little closer to the screen so you can see those images. All right. So you have the cartoon of Jordan. Then you have Patrick Ewing being compared again to an ape. So this has been going on, people. In the year 2000, a children's electronic speller called VTech Alphabet came under criticism when some parents realized the suggestive nature of the first 3 letters of the alphabet when played in sequence. So you have this electronic toy, and when the child presses the letter, all right, this is what they hear. A is for ant and ape. B is for black. C is for crack. The VTech company complained and claimed that they selected the sequence for phonetic reasons. When the company received numerous complaints and negative media coverage, they finally changed the newer versions of the toys. Those already on the market remained. The item at far right is a t-shirt showing an urban ape dressed in hip-hop clothes, which I did print that out so you can see it a little bit closer, with a gold chain, gold front teeth, a boom box, and a can of spray paint. All right. So here's that t-shirt. Can everybody see that? So you've got the monkey rapper t-shirt. All right. Have to understand how this image is being placed into pop culture. All right. Anti-black monkey imagery came into the open during the 2008 Barack Obama campaign. Several t-shirts and buttons were created and openly sold on the auction website eBay, depicting Obama as a banana-eating monkey. Another mocked the candidate as a lower form of evolution. And this imagery continues on the internet after his election. Though many Americans wanted to believe his election victory was a sign that the country had entered a post-racial era, the racist imagery associating the president with apes and as a chicken and watermelon eating coon suggests otherwise. In fact, several public incidents have linked to these images to elected officials in the Republican Party. One specific episode involving anti-black monkey imagery happened April 2011. A tea activist and Orange County Republican Party official, Marilyn Davenport, made headlines when it was revealed that she had sent out an email with the president depicted as the offspring of chimpanzees. The text of the email read, "Now you know why there's no birth certificate." She claimed to have not thought about the historic implications of the image, despite the fact that she had earlier defended a fellow Orange County Republican for having sent out an image of the White House lawn as a watermelon patch with the message, "No Easter egg hunt this year." Unfortunately, the racist imagery has not been restricted to the president. In November 2009, a Photoshopped racist image of Lady Michelle Obama made international news. There were and are plenty of racist images on the internet, but what made this image such a big story was that it ranked first on the internet giant Google's image search page. Google issued an explanation that was about as complicated as the search algorithm they blamed. And they banned the image host from search results because the site violated Google's policy on spreading malicious software. When the image resurfaced on another site, Google displayed the image with a disclaimer. The image also reappeared on at least one blog in which the author questioned why it was unacceptable to caricature the First Lady in this way. And yet it seemed to be acceptable that President George Bush was likewise caricatured. He represented numerous monkey comparisons of President Bush. So he said, well, we make President Bush into a monkey. Why can't we make Lady Michelle Obama into a monkey? Well, here's why. The blogger was attempting to justify racism using a variation of one of the common excuses, that it's okay to stereotype one group if others are likewise being stereotyped. However, images associating President Bush with monkeys are distasteful and disrespectful, but they were not done to stereotype an entire race of human beings over the last several hundreds of years. All right? Those were an expression of anger towards the president's policies, including having chosen a war in Iraq, which many of the Americans disagreed with. However, these images are ugly and they are personal, but they were not used to systematically discriminate against white Americans for several hundred years. Images like the one created of Michelle Obama, who holds no elected office and has no real impact on public policy, are directed towards an entire race of people. And of course, my Periscope stopped. So hold on, my good friends. All right. Hopefully they'll be able to come back in. I'll give them just a few seconds here. Thank you all for bearing with me, my YouTubers. You all are hanging in there. Sorry about that. It cut me off right mid-sentence. So hopefully everybody will be able to come back in. So I'll read that last little piece there again. All right. Remember, these images of President Bush are ugly and personal. Yes, it is simianism. Simianism. All right. So these images were ugly and personal, but they were not used to discriminate against all white people. And Michelle Obama did not hold a public office when they were making this mockery of her. So they were directing this mockery towards an entire group of people. And this image was also used to justify slavery and to impose second-class citizenship status on Black people after the Civil War by Jim Crow laws, and to discriminate against Black Americans economically. To claim that the imagery is equal, all right, is to negate historical fact. It is not equal. Okay? So I'm going to show you these images so that you all can get a closer look up on them. All right? And those of you who are screenshotting, you'll be able to screenshot. So there are the images at the top. All right? Some of the campaign t-shirts that went out concerning Obama. Anti-Obama campaign shirts. Okay. Then this was the email that got two of those staffers, Republican staffers, fired. They sent this picture out of him being descended from apes. All right. And then there's the image that was photoshopped of Michelle Obama. All right. That came up #1 on Google search engine. And then, of course, like we said, you can look all over the internet and you will keep finding these images. All right. So when people say President Trump is the most mocked president ever, that's an alternative fact. Okay. Lastly. In 2009, a Cuddle With Me black doll was released, packaged with a monkey and wearing a hat that read Lil Monkey. These dolls were sold at Costco stores and were pulled from the shelves after the chain received complaints from consumers. All too often, the white perpetrators of these incidents claim to be ignorant of the history. Studies show that only about 8% of white Americans claim to be aware of the history of the association between blacks and apes. So only 8% of you are aware of this history if you're white. This is why we're having this teaching today. Because clearly it's needed. All right? Only 8% of white Americans claim to be aware of the history between black people and apes. Whether or not this is true, some disturbing research released in 2009 shows a high level of subconscious engagement with this association. They did a study of mostly white male undergraduates and revealed that just a second of priming the subjects with images of the words ape and gorilla shown too fast caused them to, when watching videos of police brutality, justify the level of violence used against the suspect when they were led to believe the suspect was black. When they were led to believe the suspect was white, there was much less rationalizing of the amount of force used by police. In all, 6 studies were included in this research. The results indicated that white Americans who aren't particularly prejudiced subconsciously associate Black people with monkeys. The researchers believe this association is held in place through implicit knowledge, the result of a lifetime of conditioning via the long history of stereotyped anti-Black imagery that depicts Blacks as less than human. It's in the subconscious. So what do we go do? What is our society go do? Let's see. We go and put out another Tarzan movie. We go and put out another King Kong movie. We put out a Godzilla movie, and there's a new one out with The Rock starring in it called what? Rampage. Angry Gorilla. So this imagery continues. Some people will say, it's just a movie. It's just a movie. Oh, it's just a movie, all right. It's a continual reinforcing of imagery that's already in the subconscious mind of people around the globe. Last image here before we move to our last section. Planet of the Apes. Yes, thank you. War for the Planet of the Apes. And boy, oh boy, if that isn't some commentary on what people want to do to Black people, I would recommend you go see that one. This is the image of the doll they were just talking about. See that? She's so cute. She's so lovely. And what is that next to her inside of the box? So they couldn't put a lamb in there. They couldn't put a little horsey next to her. They couldn't even put a unicorn in the box. They wanted you to know, all right? They wanted you to know, yes, we still associate you with monkeys. And the little band over her head says little monkey, all right? That's why it was pulled from the shelves. Somebody else would say, oh, that's so sweet. That's so cute. But it's not cute when it's been used against you for several hundred years to dehumanize a group of people. All right. Lastly, ape theology. Let's talk about the theological side. The theological side and the danger of this ape theology. And I might draw on these a little bit because they look kind of grainy. The images look a little bit grainy, so I might draw on it a little bit just to point out a few things. So there's a book. If you've never heard of it, you can go look it up. You can actually download the PDF. The book is called, and this is where I have pulled this from. It's a long title, but it's out there and available. The book is called The Negro, a Beast or in the Image of God. And what I did was I went and I downloaded all of the imagery in this book so you can get a better understanding of how people feel about Black people that believe in this racist, white supremacist doctrine. This was one of the books that was used by the Klan. But I don't think it's just used by the Klan because I see too many white people that have some of these same ideologies floating through their brains. So I'm going to guess that more than the Klan used it, or they passed it around, or some of the preachers that were preaching from these texts were also a part of the Klan. That's the only thing I can surmise. But the book is titled The Negro, a Beast or in the Image of God. So the images I'm about to show you are from this book. And I'm going to read some of the passages of what they believe God has to say about Black people. It's important that we understand this, because if we don't, we're going to keep thinking that these people actually agree with us. We're going to keep thinking that because we are Christians, that they too believe we are the children of God. They don't believe that. All right. So I want us to wake up. I need some more of us to wake up, wake all the way up, and understand what it is these people believe about you. Okay? Here we go. Here's the first two images out of this book. Let me fold it in half so I can bring it up a little bit closer. This is the first image in this book. The first image in this book, if you can see off over here in the darkness, all right, that's supposed to be black people. Got it? That's supposed to be Adam and Eve. Everybody see that? That's supposed to be Adam and Eve. That's supposed to be black people. Why are we off in the bushes? I'll tell you why. Because this says, morning of the creation of man, heaven. Then it says direct line of kinship with God. Direct line of kinship with God. Okay? They're telling you they don't see you as a direct line of kinship with God. All right? Their imagery makes it very plain how they feel. At the bottom, it says Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Then the question says, where does the line of kinship between God and Adam and Eve connect with the Negro? That's the question at the bottom. That's exactly what I just read. All right. That's what it says. They're telling you they don't believe you have a connection with God, Adam, Eve, or heaven. All right. We need to understand this. I know she's saying, what? Exactly. We need to understand this. So when my black brothers and sisters are trying to reason with white supremacists, and you want to reason with them and say, we're all God's creation, or we're all brothers and sisters, that does not compute to them. All right? It does not compute, because this is what they believe. Just want to help us. Here's another one. This is the second image in this same book. You see that? When people, this is why I get a little ticked off when people keep saying to me, why does it matter that Jesus looks like Kenny Loggins? It doesn't matter if God is black or white. Well, it may not matter to you, but to a white supremacist, it most certainly does matter if God is black or white. Because this is what they teach, okay? All right? If I were in front of some of you, I'd probably be shaking you by the shoulders and saying, snap out of it. Okay? So this is their version of Christ. Okay? Christ, the Son of God. What does the statement down here say? It says, man was created in the image of God. Is the Negro in the image of God's Son, Christ? Remember what I said before. If your image of God is distorted, okay? If your image of God is distorted, then how you view humankind will also be distorted. And let me be clear. It's not just distorted for him. It's also distorted for him. Got it? Can I say it one more time? If the image of God is distorted to him, it's also distorted to him. Okay? This is in their text of what they believe about black people. You don't have to take my word for it. Go look up the book and pull up the PDF, and it's in there. All right? So if my God looks like me and you don't look like my God, then clearly you didn't come from my God. Got it? Okay? And if I put you in front of this image over and over and over again, I put your grandmother in front of this image, I put your father in front of this image, I put you in front of this image, I put your child in front of this image, then guess what? you are going to associate divine qualities, goodness, all of those things with this image. Therefore, even when this person is doing evil against you, you're going to find it very hard mentally to disconnect this person from this one. All right? Which is why when evil is done, some people's automatic response is, I forgive, I forgive. They haven't even said they're sorry. They haven't said they're sorry, and you're already saying, I forgive. Listen, that's a programmed, automated, psychological response. Got it? Good. All right, I'm moving on, because I'm already at 1 o'clock. Okay, here are some more images from this book. Here's the next image. So I'm helping you to see the progression here. All right. They're telling you, we don't see you. We only see your place in the garden as something looking in on paradise. You're not a part of paradise. You're not a part of this direct lineage. All right. And then they're making the progression that this is what God looks like. He looks like me. So I must be like God and you must not be. All right. Therefore, here's the next image in the book. 2 white people with a black baby. Yeah, this is deep, but we need to talk about it because nobody's talking about this. All right. And the wording at the bottom says, does like beget like? Could that Negro child be the child of pure Adamic parents? If the Negro is an offspring of Adam and Eve, then it is possible. So they're telling you all pure white cannot produce black. That's what they're telling you. That actually is true. All pure white, all right, the recessive traits, the recessive genes cannot produce black babies. But let's see where they go with this, okay? Here's the next image in the book. I'm telling you, listen. Here's the next image in the book. Just say la. Just let it sink in. Because some of us are not understanding the level of stuff we're going to have to uproot. I'm just trying to help us understand. Okay, so it says the Virgin Mary and the child Christ. See, again, I'm going to help y'all. They just tied God to white men, okay, as divine. So that means they also have to tie their counterpart, the white female, to the divine. Okay, so you have the Virgin Mary and the child Christ. It says, could the child Christ possibly be of the same flesh as the Negro? That's the question on the bottom. All right. Oh, did I forget to tell you who wrote this? I believe Apostle is still on. The writer of this particular theological text was the president of the Divinity School of Harvard. Just let that sink in. Harvard. Okay, so they have made a connection. Charles Carroll, yes, thank you. They have made a connection. They've made their divine connection to God for themselves. All right. Then they've made the divine connection of the Virgin Mary to their white female counterpart. So both of them are divine and everyone else is not. And if you teach this around the world, then what do you get? You get a group of people who are actually in the minority having the power and the ability to control and dominate world markets because you have trained everyone that you are divine and everyone else is not. All right, moving right along. Here are some more lovely images from this book. Okay. Again, they come back to this issue of Adam and Eve. And then they move on. Notice how we have progressed, okay? We started out with Adam and Eve in the garden. They have direct lineage to God. Then we have the white male who has the likeness of God in their eyes. Then you have the white female who has the likeness of God's mother, okay? Then I'm going to represent Adam and Eve back again with the little ape-like tar baby at the bottom. And it says, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Is the Negro and offspring of Adam and Eve? Can the rose produce a thistle? That's what the text says. I'm trying to bring it close enough so you all can read it for yourself. It says, can the rose produce a thistle? All right. So they're showing by their whiteness that this Negro cannot possibly be connected to the divine because we have chosen to make Adam and Eve white. Therefore, why would you connect the beast to the virgin? That's actually what it says on the bottom. The beast and the virgin. Sounds like they stole some scriptural terms and twisted it to connect it to the white woman and the black male. They call it the beast and the virgin. Let that sink in. It says, can you find a white preacher who would unite in holy wedlock a burly Negro to a white lady? All parents, you would rather see your daughter burned and her ashes scattered to the winds of heaven. Now you want to talk about ISIS? Oh my goodness. The description down here says you would rather see your daughters burned and her ashes scattered to the wind of heaven than to unite your virginal daughter with a beast. All right. Doctrine. So what is their reasoning behind why do we have red, as they say, red, yellow, and brown skin? This is what they actually wrote. Red, yellow, and brown skin denotes a mixing of the human family, which is all white, with the beast, the Negro. So they believe that everybody who's not pure white, if you're not a Negro and you're not pure white, it's because a white person mixed with a beast and created all these other people. Then he says, here's two more images. All right, take care, Lady Judy. You can come back and watch the replay. This one says, did nature blunder? And it's two white people holding up the little quote unquote Negro child. And then here it says, will your next child be a Negro? Would you believe that the above Negro was the daughter of pure whites? Never, though it was written in letters of fire upon face of the heavens. Will your next child be a Negro? Your children are bone of your bone and flesh of your flesh. Then who can believe that the Negro is an offspring of Adam and Eve without fearing that their next child may be a Negro? All right. These are images taken directly from that book. Now, I want to read you some very important things that they say in this book because I'm seeing it played out in our current society. In chapter 8, they begin talking about the fact that it was not God's original plan that his son should be crucified, but amalgamation or mixing and disobedience of the human family made it imperative. The Bible teaches, they say, that the design of God in creating man was that he should have dominion over all earth and the animals. And when created, he was commanded to subdue the earth and have dominion over fish and fowl and beast. All right. So this is why a lot of them believe that they are supposed to dominate people all over the world, because they see them as the beast that God has given them dominion over. It also teaches that man disregarded the design of God in creating him and violated the law of God by descending to social equality with a beast of the field, and accepting his counselor, his creatures, over which he was commanded to have dominion. All right. He says the Negro asserts that all of his old abolition sympathies, which have been weakening for over 10 years in view of the self-assertion of our Negroes since the day of their emancipation, had vanished like so many scattered things which he had no further use of. Who would have dreamed that in less than 35 years after emancipation, one of the foremost champions of Negro suffrage would denounce the Negro as more than a ever shiftless, unteachable, immoral race, incapable of any true civilization and unworthy of American citizenship, and would speak of emancipation of the so-called education of the Negro as absurdity. So they're talking about those who are saying that they have come to regret the emancipation of the Negro. Mind you, this book was written in the early 1900s. It is needless to say that we honor this fearless man and admire his courage and his lofty patriotism for upholding the truth. At the same time, we must beg leave to respectfully suggest that his using the term re-enslave in connection with our future relations with the Negro indicates that he fails to grasp the situation. So they're saying, why are you even using the term re-enslave? Because here's what they really believe. He goes on to say, and I quote, "As a matter of fact, the Negro was never a slave. To conceive the design of enslaving an individual, we must presuppose that he is free. The first act of enslavement is to deprive him of his liberty. This the Negro never had since the creation of man." Understand? They're saying you can't even use the term freeing the Negro because they're saying, according to creation, he was never free to begin with. He was never a man to begin with. So don't talk to us about enslavement or re-enslavement, because it's not possible to enslave someone that we don't consider is even a person. He goes on to say, Negro is an ape, hence his status in the universe. This is on page 289, should you decide to go and look up the PDF, all right? Page 289, he says, hence his status in the universe. His relation to man, like that of every other animal, was fixed irrevocably by God in the creation, and no act upon man's part, listen, no act upon man's part, whether legislative, executive, or judicial, can change it. This is their doctrine. The will of God upon this most important subject, as expressed in those original statutes given man in the creation. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, over every living thing that moveth upon the earth, is the supreme law of the universe. And in the eyes of this great law, there is not today, there never was, and there never can be on this earth such a thing as a free Negro. This is the doctrine. All right? So they're already telling you, we don't care what legislative, executive, or judicial orders come down the pipeline. As far as we're concerned, the law of the universe, the supreme law, has decided black people's place. And to them, there is no such thing as a free Negro. All right? Got it? This is why some of them, regardless of what field they're in, this is why they will call the police on you. Okay? Because to them, there's no such thing as a free Negro. To illustrate, suppose a man commits a felony and is arraigned, convicted, and sentenced to prison for a term of years, but makes his escape, flees to a foreign country where he lives out his days without being apprehended. Did that man in his exile live out his days and die a free man? No jurist would decide. From the hour of his conviction, that man lived and died the property of the state. So it is in this case. Listen. Under the law of God, the Negro, like every other animal, is the property of man, without reference to whether he is ever brought in contact with him or not. The mere fact that man in his blind criminal folly declines to exert that control over the Negro in common with the rest of the animals which God designed him to have and commanded him to exercise does not free the Negro. It can only damn man for his shameless contempt for God's plan of creation and for his wanton violation of divine law. Because according to them, divine law says black people are animals, they're not human, therefore they're supposed to be dominated and controlled. That is their doctrine. Man was created free. His personal liberty was implied in his assignment to dominion over all the earth and over the animals. This is why there was an insistence upon calling black people boy and the other word. And this is why there was a counter resistance to being called a boy. And this is why the sanitation workers in Memphis insisted on being called a man. That's why they walked with and marched with the signs that said, I am a man. Please learn your history. All right. It wasn't just them saying, oh, you gonna call me a man. No, it was an assertion of their right to human qualities. It was the assertion of their right that they are a human. It was their assertion of their right that they had free will and divine right, just like these other people who didn't believe that they were human. Okay? Hence, man can be enslaved. This is what they're saying. They're not even men, so you can't even say that they can be enslaved. Man can be enslaved, but since you cannot enslave the horse or the dog, how can you enslave the ape? They all belong to one kind of flesh and were placed under man's dominion in the creation. This absurd idea that it's optional with man to enslave or to emancipate the Negro is another result of placing man and the ape in the same family. See, these people had a problem with the theory of Darwin because they said, you cannot place humans in the same family as apes, because if you do that, we've already said that black people are apes. So you're going to make black people in the same family as humans, and we can't have that. All right. Had the Negro been imported here as an ape, as God made him, and had we maintained only such relations with him as were legitimate, the combined world would have been powerless to have taken a Negro from the South. God would have stood by the South to defend and maintain the relation of master and servant, which he established between man and Negro in the creation. Still talking about their doctrine. But instead of this, under the influence of the theory of development, the anti-scriptural church theory that the Negro is the son of Ham, he was brought here as a lower race of man, the Ham race, whom it was legitimate to enslave as a means of civilizing, educating, and Christianizing. As might have been expected, a mix at once began. And soon it transformed every farm, many a home, into a harem. It defiled our youth and the manhood of the land. It sent many a devoted wife and mother brokenhearted to the grave. It corrupted the flesh and defiled the earth and brought our country under the curse of heaven, until God in his wrath and disgust decreed that the so-called slavery system, which was conceived in crime, brought forth in iniquity, was based solely on his violated law, should be blotted from the face of the earth. Then angels wept and devils laughed at the spectacle presented here by the continent drenched in the blood of its sons, hemispheres in mourning, the civilized world in tears. And just so long as we allow the Negro and his mixed prodigy imposed upon us as lower races of men with whom we may associate with on terms of social, political, religious equality, just as long as we will continue to labor under these curses of God, just so long will these degraded creatures have more or less political dominion over us. Just so long will the youth and manhood of the land be mixed. Just so long will the chastity of our wives and the virginity of our daughters be subjected to their brutal assaults. So to them, slavery came to an end because you tried to make beast-like people human and you tried to enslave them. And so God cursed it, and you all are continuing to mix with these people, and we are under the curse of God because of all of this mixing. So imagine what these people feel right now. This was 1906. All right? I'm just trying to make it plain. This is the doctrine. And the more that our news continues to talk about the browning of America, the mixing of the races, the more it stirs up people who actually believe this doctrine, that our nation is under a curse because of the mixing of races. The emancipation of the Negro in the United States was not the work of an anti-slavery party, nor of a pro-slavery party, nor of a Lincoln, nor of a Davis, nor of a Grant, nor of a Lee, nor of the boys in blue or the boys in gray. These, one and all, were mere instruments wielded by our outraged God to compel us to recognize and respect his order. In conclusion, this is their conclusion. The conclusion is natural results. The natural results of all of this mixing, and Dylan Roof also wrote about this in his manifesto, the screams of the ravished daughters of the sunny South have placed the Negro in the lowest rank of the beast kingdom. They're taking over. They're taking over our women. They're taking over our children because you all have disrupted the natural order according to their doctrine that Black people were never supposed to be seen as even subhuman. Forget human. They were never, according to us, supposed to even be seen as subhuman. They were supposed to remain beasts of the field, dominated and controlled and used by us to till the ground and till the land. But because you all wanted to try to civilize them, you all declared them subhuman and gave them a little taste of humanity. And now they are mixing with our pure white people, our pure white women, and they are creating more little mixed beasts. That's what they believe. All right? Their concluding chapter says this: the Bible and divine revelation, as well as reason, all teach that the Negro is not human. That was their conclusion. In AD 1867, there appeared in the United States a work titled The Negro, What is His Ethnological Status? By the Reverend B.H. Payne, who wrote under the false authorship title Ariel. He asserted that the Negro is not the son of Ham, that he was not a descendant of Adam and Eve, and that he is simply a beast that has no soul. The work produced a marked sensation, especially in church circles, and as might have been expected, it subjected its able author to unmerited abuse of the Negroized clergy of the day. Bereft of all argument, something which these reverend gentlemen seldom condescend to, they could only argue Ariel with their favorite, and in this case, their only weapon, ridicule and scorn. So, let me conclude by saying this. Now that I'm done, let me conclude by saying this. Whether you are Black and gay, whether you are Black and Muslim, whether you are Black and Christian, this book does not distinguish any of that. The only thing that book is concerned about, the only thing that doctrine is concerned about, is that you are Black. Okay? That's the only thing it's concerned about. It doesn't care about all of your other subtitles. Hear me, my fellow Black people. There are people walking around in America that wholeheartedly believe what I just read to you today. All right? They wholeheartedly believe it. They believe you can never be equal with them. They believe that you can never be on the same level as them. They don't even believe that you're subhuman. They believe that you're not human and that you have no soul. Because if you don't have a soul, then I don't have to worry about if I kill you, because you're not going anywhere anyway. I consider you a beast of the field. That's why I don't have, they might not have a problem pumping 20 bullets into you if they don't think you have a soul. All right? So please, for the love of all that is holy, understand the day and age and time in which we live. Black people, look out for each other. Take care of each other. Stop letting your sub-labels cloud the bigger picture, which is all of you, by a certain group of people. All of you are hated. Okay? There's a group of people that actually believe that America is under a curse. because of the mixing of the races. This is not old news. This is doctrine that continues to be perpetuated. You just didn't know. You might not have known how deeply embedded the doctrine is, but you know now. So I encourage you, share this broadcast for as long as it's going to be up, because I guarantee you it's probably not going to stay up on YouTube. All right. Download a copy of it if you know how to do that. Download it onto your PC. All right. Make sure you have a copy of this saved somewhere, because it's probably going to be snatched down off of YouTube. I'm just being honest. All right. I will try to come back. I may try to come back and rebroadcast it through Facebook Live. I'll either play it from Periscope or play it from YouTube and try to rebroadcast it on Facebook Live. But we already know Facebook Live gets reported. So the book is called The Negro, a Beast, or in the Image of God. And the author's name is Charles Carroll. The Negro, a Beast, or in the Image of God. All right. It's close to 400 pages long, which is why, of course, I couldn't spend all the time reading the whole thing. But that's why I wanted to just pull the images out so you could see them. Here's another article I want you to go take a look at. This is the title of this article is Harvard Scientists Study the DNA of White People and Found Something Truly Surprising. I won't tell you what they found. You'll have to go read the article, okay? Harvard scientists studied the DNA of white people and found something truly surprising. All right? And this is the image shot from the article itself. All right, I have taken up enough of your time. I want to thank you all who stuck with me for the extra 30-something minutes here. I appreciate you all. I hope that you will take in what I have shared. This is not to disparage anybody. This is just to make the truth known. You need to understand what you are dealing with. All right? Everybody smiling in your face does not think you're human. Okay? And you need to be aware of that. And you need to be aware of what they believe about you. All right? You don't have to subscribe to it. You don't have to subscribe to it. You don't have to accept it. But you do need to understand what people think about you, so you know how to respond and you know how to govern your own life and your own family accordingly. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So go out today and be light. Thank you again for your time and attention. Take care. Don't forget to download your copy of this, and God bless.